Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with our first episode of the year of Vibe Space. Today, with a very special guest, Renny Chan from Convo. Say hello to everyone, Kenny. Renny,
Hi, everybody.
hello. Renny, just so you know, your video is a little
Yeah,
shrink, so it
something
looks
weird
like
happened.
you are trying to lose weight. Maybe I could use
I
a
don't know.
trick in my camera.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. That was weird, but I think it's working now.
It's perfect now. So thank you very much, Randy, for joining. We would love to hear about your takes and how we started Convo and what you were building. So if you could start with introducing yourself, letting us know what Convo is about and what brings you to this founder journey.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Convo, and I started developing Convo. Well, the idea for Convo actually came to me while I was working at a little company called Miro, and I was responsible for new user growth. So I had to do a lot of my own user research. And I think it was that moment that I was like, man, I wish that I could conduct way more research, right? So that I could better understand our users because, when you're doing user interviews, you can only really do so many at a time, obviously one at a time rather, but you can only do so many for so many different projects, right? And I wish that I could have just a lot more scale. So, that was several years ago, and kind of fast forward to about 2 years ago now, I started to build Convo itself, and at its core, Convo uses AI voice interviews and analysis to help companies develop new products, improve existing products through good research. And we've been able to reduce this research down from months to days, so now, companies can do way more research than they could before at a fraction of the cost.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really amazing. If possible, I could frame the initial 10 minutes or so of the interview exactly on that. Because in our community, especially with the launch of Vibe Space, we do have a lot of early stage founders that maybe are still working in other companies, maybe are still pursuing other roles, maybe fresh graduates. And sometimes the idea for your next billion-dollar company, maybe like Cover, right? It starts in your previous employment before you even start your startup or before you even have the idea. So you mentioned that you were working at Miro, and
Yes,
there you had the idea. You understood the pain and had the idea to build this solution that you now have at Convo, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So tell me a bit more. How was that? What kind of process you discovered, and did people support you at the time? Or I'm going to leave my job and do this. And how was the process of coming up with this idea?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, so because I was kind of working in that field already, so it was actually very useful to leverage the connections that I had, right? Talking to my colleagues, talking to other folks kind of in the UX research space and that kind of thing. And, that was kind of the initial, I would say, step that helped me at least validate the idea. I, of course, did, way more validation interviews afterwards, right? I think, in total, I conducted probably 200 interviews to really, really flesh out and understand, hey, is this a problem that's worth solving, or is this just the problem to me, right? Because I mean, obviously, it's really nice to solve your own problem, but you also got to make some money so that you can live while solving some problems, right? So yeah, I would say that my some of my friends, I think a lot of my friends, actually wouldn't say some of my friends, a lot of my friends that work jobs, I would say didn't really understand why I would actually quit this extremely high paying job that I have to, eat ramen for the next like several years, right? And, I think I'm very fortunate. And I always say this, right? That my partner, though, was extremely supportive, right? Like when I told her, like I was thinking about this and, what this would involve for both of us, right? Because, obviously there's decisions that we have to make financially between the two of us on how we actually want to go forward with this kind of thing. And yeah, she was extremely supportive. She told me, you really need to go for this, because if you don't, she said, I know you, and if you don't do this in 10 years, you're going to look back and you're going to say, oh my god, I wish I would have tried. But at least now, if you tried and it doesn't work out, you'll know that you tried your best and it didn't work. You can go back to a job or whatever, or do something different. But at least you tried, and then you don't have any regrets. So I would say, yeah, it's kind of it was a mixed bag, right? Like, my friends definitely didn't understand it. My parents definitely didn't understand it. My parents are just like, "What? You're gonna leave a job to do something like this? Like, are you absolutely insane?" So, because like my parents are kind of the generation of like, hey, you finish university, you get a good job, you get married, you have kids, you die, and that's kind of it, right? Like, you don't do these crazy things.
Yeah, bro, that sounds so familiar. That's the story of a lot of people. Like sometimes their partners are not that supportive, or their friends are pushing toward comfort and all. There are a lot of things involved, of course, when we're doing this kind of decision. And it's always that decision moment. Should we go for that, or should we stall more time, right? And this was probably not your first idea, right, Ren? You might have had a lot of ideas in the past. So what was the turning point for you to decide on Convo? No, this is the thing that I want to build. This is what is going to be my legacy. And then you quit your high paying job to eat ramen for several years, like I said.
Well, I don't know about legacy, right? Maybe, hopefully, this can be a legacy, but yeah, I've definitely had other ideas before, right? I actually, before running growth, I ran data and analytics, so I had all these different ideas of how we can actually deliver better analytics to people, and how I could build analytics as a product and that kind of thing. And I think the reality for me was that, like, when I first kind of started exploring these different ideas that I had, right? In particular, like the analytics one, um, or Convo, or I had a bunch of other different ones, right? But these were the two that I kind of took the furthest. I think that the difference between the two, right, was that with Convo, I could actually really articulate and feel the actual pain, right? Because not that I didn't feel the pain as an analytics professional, right? But that was more just like in service of like, oh, hey, how can I make it so that when people come to ask me questions, they don't have to ask me questions anymore. They can just ask the system, right? And that's, I don't know, I felt like that was like solving such a small problem. And where, the idea for Convo was really appealing was because actually I saw the power of having really good user research, right? Because at Miro, we did a lot of this research to really understand our users, to understand their motivations, right? Their pain points that we could actually help solve with Miro. And, in doing so, me and my team, we were able to help Miro grow very significantly, right? Like, we went from half a million users when I joined to 40 million users 2 years later after I joined, right? So I felt like I could see the impact of
Impressive.
having really good research. And I think that's why, this really appealed to me, because I think that, as we, especially now, if you think about where the world is today, even from 2 years ago, with the emergence of vibe coding, you're going to have a lot of people that have developed products that they didn't do a lot of research, right? And they just kind of put it out there, and it's probably, it probably works and probably pays them good money, but they could actually make the experience a lot better for their users. So I think this is why it's really exciting for me.
That's a great point because it's not only the idea that you have. A lot of people can have good ideas, but also feeling that urge of you are the one to build that idea. Like I had very good ideas on how to go to Mars and now, but I'm not Elon Musk, so I don't feel this
Yeah.
push of going there. But you had this very well established background of UI UX research, right? So maybe you want to expand a little on that. Why did you have this assurance that you are the right person to build Convo and not just a random adventurer in this space, right?
Yeah, I think I mean, I think that that's a really good question, right? I think that if we kind of think about this, it's like, oh yeah, like why not? Why me versus any other person who did UX research, right? I think that I've always had, I think, a personality of kind of entrepreneurship, right? Even at a very young age, right? So when I was when I was really young, I really wanted a gaming console, and I didn't grow up with a lot, right? So obviously my mom would not buy me a gaming console, and but I figured out, like, there were these candies that we had in school called gushers, and I essentially figured out a point of arbitrage, basically, right? Like, I found that, oh, the school was selling them for, I can't remember now. I'll just make something up. Maybe it was like $2 a pack or something like that. But then at the shop, I found like a box of like 10 for $5 or something like that. So then I bought those, and then I sold it to my friends at 75 cents or whatever it is, like a fraction of the price. And that's how I funded my my dreams of owning a PlayStation, right? So yeah, I think that, I've always kind of been an entrepreneur at heart. So I think that's why I felt like, I'd be the right person to do this.
No, that's great. That's great. Build your confidence and get you the correct direction, right?
Yeah.
These are the kind of questions for everyone watching in the audience there. These are the kind of questions that investors would ask you all the time as well, and also partners, like you're finding a co-founder and all. So looking at the example of Rainy, this can give you a bit of inspiration. Are you ready to work in your field? Ready to leave your high-paid job to eat ramen for a couple of years? So these kind of check marks are very important, right? And let's go to a very dear point for the community. We're speaking about vibe space and more about vibe coding using AI to build things, right? And
Yeah.
Convo is an AI heavy solution. You are framing Convo as the intersection of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, right? So my first question, are you doing that just for hype? It's not, right? How you're leveraging AI for building Convo inside the product or in the code base itself? Tell me how you're facing this new era for software development.
Yeah, well, I would say that Convo as a company probably wouldn't exist if we didn't have AI, right? To be honest, right? For a few reasons, right? I think that in order for us to get the scalability of the interviews that I wanted, right? Basically, now we can do 1,000 interviews concurrently, right? In order to do that, the only way you'd be able to do that is through AI, right? And so we are a native AI company, and I think that it was because of some of these multimodal models that started to be released that I said, hey, like, actually this could be a thing that I could use to make my dreams come true. And so yeah, it's I would say it's definitely not hype. We're not just adding AI to our name and in hopes that we get a nice big fat VC check. And I think the other part of it is too, right? Like, we're a very lean team, right? Right now we are finally we're 6 people, but we were, I was myself by myself for like a whole year, other on the tech and on the sales side. And I brought on our chief research officer, and then we brought on an academic researcher, and it was the three of us for the last couple of years, like, yeah, basically. And now we actually finally have a couple of AI engineers that have joined the team. And I would say that if it were not for a lot of these AI tools that were available over these last couple of years to help me actually with the product development, right? Things would have moved way slower, right? And B, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish like the things that I've been able to accomplish, right? Like, I think I mentioned this to you before, right? Like, I didn't study engineering. I taught myself how to code, right? So like, I don't write the most elegant pieces of code, right? But like, because I had these AI tools, or like back early days, I could write a piece of code, and essentially I would use the AIs to check my work, right? And I would have OpenAI check my work, and then I would have Claude check that work, and then maybe Gemini to check like all of everybody's work, kind of thing, right? Like, it's kind of dependent on what I was doing. So that actually helped actually really accelerate product development, right? And it's in particular, like there are small things that might have taken me, several hours to do. I can actually now actually, for very small things, like maybe moving things around in the UI or whatever, right? I can actually simply just use some of these AI tools to help me do that. And that saves me way more time, right? And also it reduces the amount of resources that I need. So, yeah, I would say in the day to day, there's probably not a day that goes by that I'm not interacting with AI in one way, shape, or another for the company.
No, that's great. So you have AI in the product and to build the product in both sides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Renny, just to assure you, I've seen way, way more code that is perfect looking with zero clients than code that is actually generating revenue, but it's sloppy and has a lot of bugs. So, perfect code, it's not an accomplishment by itself. If you have a perfect piece of software, but it's not going anywhere, it's not generating sales, it's as dead as a bad code, right? We're not going to experience the bugs anyway. And I speak that with a background, a software engineer, more than a decade working in the field. So I've seen bad code doing wonders, doing sales and all, and good code just sitting there doing nothing. So it's important to balance. Of course, you don't want to expose your users to security risks, to
Definitely not.
data leaks and all, but some balance between speed of development, shipping new features, and code quality is very important, especially now in the age of vibe coding, right? So this is exactly the kind of thing that I wanted to surface in this podcast because a lot of people using AI to code. And you
Yep.
mentioned that you were through a whole year, you were alone. You were the only engineer in the team, but you're also the CEO and the founder and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So how did you manage it? What kind of tools you use it? How did it go? Could you
Yeah.
ship a working prototype in 1 year just with AI tools?
I mean, so I think that maybe now, I think it's a lot easier now actually to do that. I think when I first started this, right, like I definitely needed to learn how to code because I don't think it was possible just to like Lovable wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it was like it was pretty crap,
Yeah.
to be to be honest. And so I think I definitely needed to know how to know how to code, right, to kind of get things off the ground. I think nowadays it's probably way easier for a non, and I'm kind of jealous, a non-technical person to actually create a prototype relatively quickly and start to collect feedback on that, right? And I feel like you could probably whip something up together in 2 or 3 weeks, right? It might not be the best thing, but you've got it working, and at least the idea is there, and you can start getting people using it, right? It's very interesting, right? Because I think that in back in the when I was working at Miro and stuff, and when we were running A/B tests and that sort of thing, or if we wanted to plan to launch a new feature, we would do things like a painted door test, right, where we don't even have the feature built yet, but we'd have like it's like a fake page that would say like, hey, like we have this thing, sign up here to get early access or whatever, and you kind of start to collect people on wait list to start to understand, this is part of research to understand, how much interest there is in something like this, right? But now I feel like with some of these tools and how quickly you can whip something up, you could actually have a working prototype, and collect those emails, right, and start to really understand how people are actually interacting with the product or the feature or whatever that you're trying to build. So I think it's actually really powerful.
Yeah, so instead of having a landing page with a fake feature that you don't have yet, you can actually vibe code something viable. It's not going to be fully integrated, yes, but still you can get a sense of the market fit of that feature of that release before you spend the actual time in development, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. And then once you kind of have a good understanding, you can pass it over to engineering or whatever. So I think that it's really, to me, vibe coding has, in my opinion, is really kind of revolutionizing the work of a product manager, right? Because I think that in the past, as a product manager, you were kind of always, your bottleneck was your engineering resources, right? What even if even if you're spinning up a landing page, right? Like this is why tools like Framer Webflow and all that kind of stuff exists, right? It's because like you had very impatient product managers like myself that wanted to start to test stuff right away. So then you had this thing that could make a landing page for you, and you can, kind of quickly collect and understand interest, right? I think that, with the advent of vibe coding, now product managers can actually, like you said, actually build a MVP of the feature. It might not be integrated with the full whole system or anything like that yet, right? But actually truly understand, how people are, whether there is interest in how people are actually interacting with the feature itself, and then hand it over to, the proper engineers to build it properly.
Yeah, love that. Because we have vibe coding as a concept that people fight against, almost like a scarecrow. They project in this name what they don't like and then they attack it. And we have vibe coding reality, like you're telling Rennie. It's like an iteration process that maybe is going to replace engineers in the future, but it's going to replace everything else. It's not only software engineers that are cooking, right? The whole humankind. But let's avoid this subject in the pod. So vibe coding is not right now a way to replace engineers. It's a way
No.
for your product manager to test things out, to figure things out, which is good for the developers. If you're watching here in the audience, how many times you received a bad spec and had to make it done in a week or so? So vibe coding is good for that. It's helping the PM to actually scope things out, test the the desire, the perception of the market for this, and then you're going to receive the spec anyway to develop things. You are hiring AI engineers now, right, Rennie?
Exactly.
So vibe coding as a concept, yes, people are like throwing names on it, but as the reality, your testimonial is great. You can now go way faster, way stronger, and without all this hassle that people are saying.
Yeah, I think we need to think of these tools, right, as ways to augment the way we work, right? Like, I think it's kind of in the philosophy of Convo as well, right? We are all about human augmentation and not human replacement, right? I don't think that, vibe coding is going to replace engineers, like you said, right? Like I brought on AI ML engineers onto the team because, like that's some just I can teach myself to code as much as I can, but there's certain things, like one of the guys on my team now, he's like built his own neural nets and things like that, right? Like that's stuff that I'll never be able to learn. And I also don't think that you can just simply kind of vibe code something like that, right? So you definitely need someone that has that level of expertise to actually build these things. So I think that leveraging, figuring out the right way to leverage these tools to allow us to move faster than we had ever before. I think that's where the power of this stuff is, right? I don't think we should look at this tool as something that's going to take your job away, right? Because I think at the end of the day, a trained engineer, and like here, I'll give you an example. So I brought these two guys on, and uh one of the one of the guys asked me, he's like, so Rennie, can you explain to me why you structured the folders this way? And I said, well, you're literally seeing the inside of my brain right now. That's why I've structured it this way. It's just like, hey, today I just made a new folder for this feature and I put it in here and whatever, right? So over the last, week and a half, we as a team actually worked on cleaning the project called Cleaning Up Rennie's Brain so that we could actually structure the app in a lot more meaningful way that we can actually properly collaborate on, right? So now we actually can take different parts of the code and work on it independently, right? Like, I like I said, I'm not a trained engineer, right? So obviously, I'm not using the best software engineering practices. And I hadn't been using the best software engineering practices to build the app. And this is something that if I had not brought on someone with the knowledge of software engineering, I probably would have continued to build the app this way, right? But I think that as the company grows and stuff, this is just it's a reality of it is that you I wouldn't be able to, yeah, it's not replacing humans, right? Like this is the perfect example of that.
Okay. This is something we call cognitive load. I even speak at that at my trainings with prompt engineering. Now, at some point, the AI produces so much thing like spaghetti code, and you can't keep up with this mentally. So it becomes like a brain model, express it to all of those folders, and you can't really know what's going on there. Sometimes you have a button in the page one that looks exactly as the button in the page three, and then you change the color of the button in page one, the other one the page tree is still the old color
Yeah.
because of the different components, and then things blow up. This kind of problems are very common in the other side of the spectrum. Like people that don't know how to code at all, and they try to vibe code, and eventually they run into these kind of problems. And it's funny because you acknowledge that you had to learn how to code before using AI
Yeah.
to
To
to fix
help with
this.
a lot of the coding. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Can you name like top three or top five things that you learned? Maybe people would follow your steps when building their own startups or MVPs.
Oh, did I learn from building Convo or?
Before you started, let's say you had just had this idea and you had the concept of Convo that you want to build with AI and you
Mm.
were vibe coding maybe with Cursor or maybe with Copilot, let's say 2 years ago. What were the top three, four, five things that you had to learn to avoid this kind of problems that you're saying today?
I would say that, the thing that I think the mistake I made, right, is that because I didn't really know how to code, right? I mean, I could write a Python script or whatever, right? But like, I don't understand these kind of bigger, I would say, software engineering concepts, right? Like, and because I was working by myself, I also didn't really think about, oh, I should probably structure this in a way that, if we touch this part of the code, then we won't break the other part of the code, and that kind of thing, right? So, you know, to be honest, I'll tell you, a little bit how here's, I guess, like, how the sausage is made, but I literally asked ChatGPT to create a coding course for me, and that's how I learned to code. That's how I learned to code 2 years ago, right? So I spent, like,
It's
I think
clever.
yeah, I spent, like, 3 months, right? And I just was doing all these different exercises, and it would actually pull stuff from, like, Code Academy and I think, like, the Odin project and stuff like that, and it kind of hobbled a course for me. And so I would say, yeah, like, like, the big thing that I think is really important, if you are not if you didn't study software engineering, right, is actually to learn some of these more important, like, because this is not has doesn't really have so much to do with writing the code, but it's actually like thinking about how you should be structuring your app itself, right? So that you can in the future collaborate with other people rather than just, like, building it willy-nilly. I think that's the number one lesson. I think the number two lesson for me would be, let's see here. I think that because I generally have tried to do most of the work myself, like, I don't think I am true like a true vibe coder, I would say, in certain ways, right? Because I don't just, like, prompt it and hope to God it works. I actually I wrote my own code, and I think that's kind of important as well, right? I think that, vibe coding will, to me, it feels like will only kind of get you so far in terms of being able to understand what's going on. And I think if you cannot at least read the code and understand the logic of what's happening behind the code, that can become a huge problem actually down the line because if there's a bug or something like that, right, you actually won't really know where to go to fix it, right? So, I have an example of this is like my brother-in-law has been vibe coding a game, and he's he's run into a bunch of different bugs. And because he doesn't know how to actually read the code, he didn't really know, like, he thought like one thing was causing the bug because it was just like, I don't remember, it's like rendering something weird. And so he kept asking the AI to fix this bug, right? And as we kind of know how this works, a lot of times it will, it'll try to fix it or whatever, or add stuff to it, and cause other problems. So I actually sat down, took a look at it, and I was like, hey, no, it's actually this thing here that's causing your problem, right? So just have the AI go and fix this instead of kind of going through your whole code base, because I think that's the other problem, right? I think with vibe coding, I think that people have to be very careful of is that context window is really important, right? So as your code base starts to get bigger and bigger, and I think this is where, again, right, I don't think engineers are going anywhere, right? Because as your code base gets bigger and bigger, you truly do need to understand your code base really well, because otherwise, like, you're going to run out of context trying to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? And there could be things that actually affect your entire code base, and you would never know, because you know at least right now there's nothing that like has a large enough context window that we can feed a entire giant enterprise ready code base in to have it analyze and fix stuff for you. So I think those are the three things I think are really important.
No, that's amazing. Uh, in practice, we're actually find a huge theory lesson here coming from you, Renny. Thank you very much for pointing this out. The first one is classic. Sam Altman said himself, if you're not using ChatGPT to upskill yourself, you're cooked. So we, we, we kind of see that in practice now, like, oh, I'm cooked, I'm going to lose my job. No, you could use your your villain against itself. You could use ChatGPT to learn how to code, or at least architecture, like you're saying, and this is a great example of that. And to your last point, the human context, right? We tried a lot of things like bigger context model, like Google, Gemini, 2 million context window with 2 million tokens. But at the end, I cannot remember that this specific file that you put there is the actual documentation for that feature or that component that you created. At some point, a human is going to outperform AIs, at least GPTs, LLMs.
Yes.
If you know, there are other kind of models that might overcome that, neuro symbolic models and blah blah blah. But speaking of like Claude, of Gemini, of ChatGPT, they are not going to remember the single detail. And the case of your brother-in-law is great for that. You need to be a human there to point in that direction, and then the AI can behave.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also, again, kind of the same philosophy we have behind Convo as well, right? We think that you should let AI do things that AI is really good at. So in our instance, right, like what AI is really good at is to give us some like massive scale, massive speed, and precision, right? But let humans do the things that humans are good at. And it's exactly like you said, understanding context, right? In our case, right? And understanding nuance, right? Like understanding that, like, hey, if a person doesn't say anything, that actually means something, right? Whereas an AI wouldn't be able to analyze that silence. They would just see it as silence and not think that, like, oh, this silence actually means something. And I think that's where, it's it's that idea that you mentioned earlier of ours, right? Of the intersection of human and artificial intelligence is really important.
Well, that's an interesting point. The same problems we have, I can relate a lot with the vibe coding part because
Yeah.
I have a development background, but I know nothing about UI UX. So you're saying that the same problems we have when writing code and the AI is hallucinating, that also apply for UI UX research when you have like a script or form that people are filling. This is the kind of parallel that we can draw here.
Yeah, I would say that, because if you actually just use AI to analyze transcripts, it will not understand that a person was silent for 10 seconds, right? But that 10 seconds of silence, as a human, when you're watching this, you're like, oh my god, right? There's something going on here. Maybe it's something's very difficult for them to do, a task is very hard for them to accomplish, or whatever it is, whatever that case may be, right? And that's something that I think that makes us uniquely human, to be able to kind of identify that and actually be able to extract that out, right? And understand that as well, right? So I think that's where there's uh, what do we say here? I think that's why it's important, right, for us to make sure that we're marrying human and artificial intelligence together.
Interesting. Is this
Yeah.
something like empathy that the AI cannot learn? or it's more like the limitation of the models? I'm generally curious about that.
Yeah, I think that definitely there is a level of empathy, right? That we can understand as humans that I don't think these models can truly grasp yet, right? Because I think as good as these models are today at convincing us that they can think and feel things, right? The reality is like these they don't think and feel things, right? Like that's something that's unique to us as human beings. And I think in the qualitative research space, right, that's where like a really, really good researcher, you know, will be able to understand these things, right? Like, and it's kind of like I kind of think about, when you're using AI to do interviews, and that's why we always tell our clients, our users, that hey, you should do a combination of AI moderated interviews and human moderated interviews, and combine that data set together and do the analysis that way. Because what I've kind of come to realize a little bit is that the AI interviewer is kind of a lot more like a junior researcher who might just go through and read the script and hope like, okay, I've asked every single question, my job is done, right? Whereas a senior and a really good researcher will, based on what the person says, might not even ask all the questions in the script, because the person might say something very interesting that we had not thought about when we created the discussion guides, created the questions, basically, right? And if that is the case, as a human, I can actually dig into that. I can ask for more clarification around that. And I can really kind of like pull on that thread and really, really understand like, hey, this is something none of us actually thought about. And this is really, really good and really insightful. So I think that's where that, like you said, the human empathy comes in.
Interesting. So, like we were saying for vibe coding, you need to have a human and AI interfacing when creating the code. How you do
Yeah.
that on Convo? Now entering a bit more about what Convo is doing. Well, how you actually interface this communication? When do you know that the AI should stop and when to get a human in the loop there?
When I'm writing the code, uh,
Actually in the product itself, like going from what we experience on vibe coding now inside Convo, since you're using AI for enhancing the UI UX interviews, right?
yes, yes, that is a really good question. And I think actually that's what makes us very, I would say, different from our competitors actually. So our competitors all kind of promise, full automation, right? Like, hey, like you can kind of set it and forget it, right? And our philosophy is like, no, we think that there are, like I said, right, we think that there are things that AI is good at, and things that humans are good at, right? So, we've kind of developed a framework for research actually, where what the for each step of the research process, right? So there's 6 steps throughout an entire research project, right? And for each step, we've kind of defined, this is what the human should do, and this is what the AI can do, right? So for example, right, like when we're setting up a research project and we're trying to define and create the discussion guide, right? Well, the human's really good at being able to frame the strategic business objectives, to really understand like creative direction, and to curate training data and that kind of thing, right? What AI is really good at is summarizing existing research, right, pulling relevant templates and things like that from previous research. And if then they can really help us identify different knowledge gaps that we might have, right? And as we move further into the research, right, like as we start to look at say designing the research itself, right? Like, well, humans are really good at kind of managing the research team, right? And navigating change, like human challenges and that kind of stuff, understanding context around the research, and actually to be able to give confidence to the stakeholders, right? That's something that AI can't do. But AI can really help us accelerate how quickly we can create a kickoff deck, right? It can help us summarize the different meetings that we have, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we try to think about these different things of like, hey, like these are the things, and I don't go through all 6 phases of research, otherwise we'll be here all night. But that's kind of how I think about that demarcation point, right? Is like, the things that require humans to interact with other humans. I think that's definitely something that we want to make sure that we keep humans there. And then for things where we need to do things really fast, we need to pull a lot of data and that kind of thing, right? We can use AI for that sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah. We definitely need to clip this later because that is gold for different topics. Speaking about UI UX, because you probably invested a lot of time, maybe more than a year, figure out what are the best skills that AI can do with
Yeah.
limitations of LLM and what the humans in the loop can do way better, right?
Yes.
No, that's gold. Just a quick contextualization about Convo. What's the stage of the company? Have you raised capital, clients, and like market reach? I'd love to get a guess of it before going to the questions from the audience.
Yeah, I mean, so we we're completely bootstrapped as a company, and I think that what's interesting, right, is that I feel like we are kind of at a time in tech, right, where we can continue to be bootstrapped for quite a long time. And the reason why I say that, right, is because with AI tools and things like that, right? Like our small little team can do so much more with so much less, right? And I think that allows us to, to bootstrap the company, right? And I think as we've kind of discussed this as a team as well, right? Like, hey, like, do we want to go out and seek VC funding? And I think the reality is for us is like right now we don't think this is the right time for us anyway, because I think we want to continue to work on building and iterating on the product. And as you probably know, right, seeking VC funding is a full time job. You're going to
Yeah,
spend months and months of time doing that, and that's months of time that you're not actually going to be working on the product, right? So I think right now for us, this works really well for us, and also I think the nice thing is that it gives us a level of freedom to solve the problem in the way that we want to solve it, and create the company in the way we want to create it, at least for now, right? So we'll see about in the future. Like our competitors are super well funded. I think one of our competitors just closed their Series B at $60 million. Good for them. But I think that's not for us right now.
yeah. Then you go at 10x more. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
last one.
exactly.
No, that's great. Bro, I do believe you know very well your field and you're very well constituted as a product, right? At least on what you expressed it so far. So it seems like we're in the correct direction. Maybe we have this recording for 1 year from now when you raise at 100 billion valuation, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was asking that because you do have a public product that you want more people to test it out right now, right? So do you have any leads or directions that they could share with people on how to test Convo or what they could do there?
Yeah, so there's actually a few ways if you want to test Convo right now. If you just go to getconvo.com, there's I think it's like what's the call to action that we put there? Give me a second here.
No worries.
Oh, it's getconvo.ai, sorry. And that should take you to our homepage. Yeah, there's a call to action called See Convo in Action or Give It a Try, I think. Yeah, Give It a Try will allow you to experience what it would be like to be a participant on our platform, right? So we're asking, like, it's a very basic research where we're just asking you how you're feeling right now, and please feel free to tell us how you feel.
I love that, like
Yeah.
Inception style. Let me put that in the bottom, like getconvo.ai. And you also have a QR code for, wait, just 1 second, forgot it.
Yeah, no
HTTPS.
problem.
So you do have a QR code for people that want to reach out to you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Let me pull that up just 1 second.
yeah, and yeah,
There
with
you
this
go.
QR code. this will take you right to my calendar, and you can book half an hour, and I can actually give you a full demo of Convo. I'll show you the analytics that we can deliver. I'll show you what it's like to be a participant, and also how simple it is to set up a research project on Convo itself.
That's amazing. What are the main personas that you're looking to speak with? Who would be your ideal target for this kind of interviews?
Yeah, ideal customers for us right now would be, you know, we have a few different profiles. So one that's kind of working for us are people in the research and insights departments at different brands. In particular, like at airlines and stuff, who actually have to figure out, building good guest experiences and stuff. Because one of the problems for them is, when they get an NPS score, there's no actual explanation behind why, they scored 7, right? But what we do is we actually give them some context behind the why that there's that 7, right? Because like people might give you a bad NPS score purely because they had a bad experience at the airport, because there was snow or something like that, and that has nothing to
Yeah.
do with the airline. So I think that's one profile, and the second profile are product managers, right? Who they want to iterate fast and build things. We can definitely help with that, right? Because we can do concept tests and that kind of stuff. You can test your Figma prototypes even and things like that. So we really enable that type of work.
Nice. Eventually, could even close the loop and the feedback from the users become prompt for the AI and vibe code, auto vibe code.
Yeah,
That's
that would
really
be
cool.
amazing, right? Like, is to take that and then like we are thinking about like ways of doing that. Of like, hey, once we've collected this voice of customer feedback, can we're actually looking at for ourselves, feeding it into our linear board so that like it'll create the new bug reports or tasks or things like that for us. So yeah, you're thinking the same way we're thinking.
Then you put CloudBot on that, a boat bot now, and then you go take vacations. That's it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So everyone, make sure to scan that QR code over there. Book a time with Renny, especially if you feel close to the offers that he told. And we do have some questions. I don't know, Renny, how much if you have a hard stop or how much time,
No,
but
I can stay. Yeah, it's fine. It's past working hours for me now, so I can stay.
same things here. Kids are asleep. Perfect time. So we do have some comments here. Let me put them up. So actually, only a couple of them. Um, Mean Lumen is commenting about the use of AI as tools. They're not like humans. They're not actors. They actually empower actors. So just a short comment that it's good for doing a tool for humans to do a lot of things, right? Maybe this is when you were saying about mixing in those 6 steps of the
Yes.
UI UX interview, mixing humans and AI. So you do see AI as a tool and not as a replacement for most of these steps, right?
Yes, exactly.
Very good point. And Augusto, hello Augusto, how's it going? Nice to see you here. Is asking how do you trust these tools if he has zero to none technical knowledge, like you did in the beginning? How did you trust? Do you actually trust the code that AI produces, or do you code review everything later?
I definitely code reviewed everything. I would say, if you have zero to no technical knowledge, right? Like I would recommend that you acquire a little bit of technical knowledge just so that you can kind of read through the code and understand, I would say, the logic, kind of like I said earlier before, right? And then, I think the thing that helped me actually, early days, especially because, I was just by myself. I kind of mentioned this before, right? I would actually, I wrote the code, right? Like, so because I taught myself, so I wrote the code, but then I would have AI do the code review for me. And then as I kind of got a bit more comfortable, and I still don't let AI do like a lot of the coding, I still am doing a lot of it myself. It's for kind of quick things that are very precise. I would just vibe code. And I was like, okay, this is fine. This isn't touching like a big, huge core part of the product. We can actually use vibe coding here. But for the most part, right, I think that being able to read that code is really important. And then I think that to build that trust, I would say that playing the AIs off of each other to get one AI to check the other AI's work is a great way to help you build some trust in it. Because if you use, say, Gemini, you use Claude, and you use OpenAI or Codex, I guess, to check the work. Well, if all three are kind of in agreement, then you have consensus that, like, okay, like this is probably a good piece of code. I can kind of release it, and I should be safe doing this. I think that's kind of how I think about it.
Nice. But when the three of them suggest different things, then you don't
Oh
really
man, that's a
have.
great question. I've not run into that. I think that probably then I would what I would probably do in that instance is I would that's a great question, actually. So I think if they're telling me to do three different things, I think that I might take a step back and rethink about how I've actually framed the problem. Like, am I actually framing this problem in the right way? Because it would, I think it would be rather alarming to me if all three were saying something completely different. Because then that means, like, oh, I think I'm just like defining this problem in a very confusing way. And obviously, this is probably not the ideal way for me to go forward with this.
I understand. That's a great point. Those AIs, they all have different training data, and now sometimes they hallucinate
Yeah.
in the middle. So I mean, there's some softwares call this arena mode that you can get a AI to battle. So that's nice recommendation. And also, your first reply was actually seeking knowledge, right? AI is not going to replace the need for you to seek proper training on software development. Actually, it is something that would go hand in hand. So maybe for Augusto, I would suggest also, like you did, getting ChatGPT and curate a custom program only for you to learn how to code, right?
Yeah, I would, I honestly would highly recommend that. I think that that will take you much further than just purely vibe coding. Because I think, you know, I think the downfalls and the pitfalls that I've seen for people that are like that haven't spent even a little bit of time to learn, some of the technical knowledge, right? You can really only go so far, right? Because I think at the end of the day, you know, like vibe coding can get you far, but I don't think it's going to get you all of the way, right? Like it might get you 70% of the way there, but that last 30% is like what you need to be able to kind of intuit and bring to the table.
Yeah, that's exactly what mind lumen, if I getting that correct, comment as well. Basic techno knowledge, at least the software development terminology and language is very useful. There are some small words I've tried this a lot of times when you ask an AI for PRD, product required document, it creates a great description. But if you ask for a normal description, it creates a sloppy work. So knowing things like backend, database, authentication, and all those little keywords can unlock you a lot of speed when developing with AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do have some couple more questions here, but let's also save a couple minutes for wrapping up later. Mind Lumen is asking, personally, I no longer need to understand the code, but I do need to understand what AI is telling me when I'm implementing and when I ask to do like a full audit or do at the end of every phase of the product development process. So it's kind of this multi-step. You said that you would use more AIs to just check, and also when you ask for example, just by chance, I'm wearing Code Rabbit t-shirts. Okay, they're not sponsors or anything, just by chance, but they do exactly that. It's a
Yeah.
software that you put in the top of commits, and they check the pull requests. I work with Quodo or the past as well. They do the same thing. Um, I guess Cursor has this feature now, the bug tracker. So this is a great suggestion for beginners, like Augusto said. Have you used any of those as well, just by chance? Those
I haven't yet.
reviewers?
No, I haven't yet, but No, now that I've learned about these today, I should add that to my to my workflow.
to this deck. Yeah, and Augusto was mentioning about the arena mode. I guess was Windsurf releasing this arena mode that you can get an AI to battle each other. The fun part is that they don't show you what model did this kind of code, so you upvote them as you
Oh,
find it
interesting.
useful. And then eventually they are going to pick the winners and start suggesting the best models for the best tasks. That's interesting as well.
That is very cool. I haven't tried out the arena mode yet. I'll have to try that out.
Yeah, so if you do want the best suggestions of tools that have just released it, follow us. GoDrabbit just released a very good tool today for planning mode. The releases are weekly. You got to follow this every week to be on the top of the game. That's great. Well, any last words, Renny, for the audience, for people watching this video later about vibe coding, about Convo, about AI? What do you think we should wrap with?
I think that to me, I think that, if you're on the fence about building something, my advice is to just go and try it, right? Like, the all you have to lose is maybe a weekend, right? And you will have learned something, and I think that's what's really important, right? Like, you will have made something, and maybe it sucks, maybe it doesn't work or whatever, right? But you will have learned something, and you would learn, like, oh, this is probably not the right way to vibe code this, or maybe this is not a vibe coding project or whatever, right? So, I think, to me, right, like, for the community, I would say, like, yeah, go out there and just try it and build something, because I'm personally excited to see how many more builders there are going to be, actually, in the upcoming years, right? Like, we're kind of at this moment in time that, like, it's unprecedented, right, where almost anybody can build something, and I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I'd say just, like, go out there and do it.
No, that's great. A battle call, maybe a vibe call, right? And it only costs you a weekend. That's right. And then it turns into a month. Then you leave your job, and then you found a really good company. I don't, I, s-
Exactly.
I don't see any downsides of that. Only upsides.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Reddy, I would like to thank you again for joining us today. People loved it. Very good questions. We peaked at a couple dozen people watching us. Next time we got to set up the socials for broadcasting. Sorry, we could be getting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I gotta create an account.
Let's link there, and I'll definitely clip this video and get this blast it out and share in the community because you gave us very good material about vibe coding, about UX research, about your founder story. It's a lot of inspiration in the middle as well. So I would definitely make this as a practical lesson for everyone vibe coding in the community. And let me also put your QR code again in the top for everyone to remember to book a time with Renny. If you find the Convo as a good match, could be a good product, or maybe you are an investor in your channel looking for companies to scout early. Renny's not accepting checks now, only after the valuation is big, right? But let's keep the content going. And if you want to know more about Vibe Space, about Venture Miner, I do suggest for you to follow our channel. Let me put here in the bottom, or Luma calendar actually, and this channel that you can like and subscribe right now. And if you go to luma.com/ventureminer, you're going to see all of our events, in-person events in New York, in SF, in Brazil. You're going to see our virtual events as well, lessons, workshops, interviews like these. So I do hope that you find this content helpful and that you have a great weekend vibe coding, like Renny said. Thank you very much, Renny. Thank you, everyone, for watching us today. We're closing almost at 1 hour, and that was a great 1 hour of content.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks everybody for joining.
Think well. Have a good one. Bye bye.